all of the fire service uh, organizations in the state got together to talk about legislative stuff and try to get like one solid series of ideas so that we're not competing with each other. And I think that's just so cool. I got to watch this. I was involved in a tiny little thing, and I got to watch this one day. And I got to tell you, there wasn't a lot of fighting and bickering. What there was great conversation, and a solid commitment to each other to make the state better, a safer place, and to make the fire service safer. So I want to thank them for giving their time tonight. These guys meet all the time, and they really do have their game on and in the right place. So Greg, why don't you take it?
All right, outstanding. Well, hey, thanks a lot, Nick. I appreciate it. I'm looking at the faces that are out there, and I'm kind of laughing because I think a lot of them, these folks have already heard this spiel because they probably participated in some of the original discussions. But listen, I'd be remiss if I didn't pick up on. I really do think this is a critical conversation. It's really an opportunity for the Connecticut Fire Service to hear it tonight or have it available, or if you're watching from Austria and it's helpful to you, great. But here's a scoop. Just to recap or to start with me, my name's Greg Priest. I am the fire chief in West Hartford, Connecticut. I'm super honored to represent some fine men and women. But tonight in my role, I'm the vice president of the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs Association, and I've been assigned as a delegate to the Joint Council of Fire Service Organizations, and I'll touch on that in a second. But before moving on, I really do want to recognize all those members who are around. I'm really honored by the work that we're doing together in the fire service, but they really do represent all facets of the fire service. And I want to commend their dedication, willingness to partner on all these issues, and honored that they've pushed me out in front of the bus to speak. But it's truly a collaborative effort, and I hope that everybody sees that and really thank them for all the work, the support that's been done ahead, behind the scenes, everywhere. So I do have to give a different shout out as well, which is those folks back in West Hartford, especially Assistant Chief O'Callahan, who have kept the village moving along here. It's a lot of work when you're out of the office and you're trying to improve the fire service as a whole. I just hope that we all understand that as representatives working for different organizations, we are truly trying to further the interests of our local organizations, but the fire service as a whole. And I know that goes for all of my colleagues who have spent a lot of time on this. So you got to answer the first why. What are we talking about tonight? Well, the first is we know we're getting together because we know the fire service in Connecticut has had a lot of different issues over the years. And we recognize this in our individual organizations, but we also recognize that as individual fire service as well. We proactively identified this in Summit 2025. That was later codified in an OPM report in Special Act 2112. That is online. Maybe I can shoot that over to Jamie for folks that want to read it, but we did a pretty good job of identifying what some of the issues were in the fire service. So I don't want to take any sort of a negative spin at all, because here's the scoop, right? The reality of it is the fire service has made a lot of progress over the last years on important issues, whether or not that's cancer or PTSD. And really, that's a nod to some of the folks you see sitting around our virtual room today. So that's great work, but we've always never been able to really get all of our priorities in sync. And what ends up happening is in times of scarcity, I think we start turning against each other because we are worried about our kind of local conditions or whatever topic is most important to us. And then ultimately, sometimes those divides or those divisions seep outside of the fire service. Folks see it, and then that divide is used against us. So that's resulted in some challenges. We've all watched some lack of bond funding being released. We know that there's some other folks, we've probably pissed off some people with our passion towards, whether or not it's regional schools or cancer or recruiting, any one of the various topics that are really, really important to the fire service right now. But it's an opinion, I think, but some legislators have kind of scratched their heads. They don't quite know what to do with a bunch of passionate folks who really want a lot of different things. And I sense, and obviously look for others to comment later, that perhaps legislators then just look really kind of local to whatever they think that they can move through for their jurisdiction or what helps out. Or maybe they just go to their local fire chief and say, what do you need? And in good faith, they give you an idea of what they want. but it doesn't take into context the larger perspective of the fire service, what some of our bigger issues are. So I think that what the net effect is through a lot of tremendous work, folks like Ted, others, we've got this legislation, but we end up with uncoordinated successes that just kind of land in certain areas. And some folks are not getting what it is that they want, and that's frustrating. So I would go back to, I don't think there's any negative intent in any of this. Nobody's acting nefariously, trying to do bad things. It's just that we all want a lot of stuff. So I think what we're trying to do in the joint council and individually in organizations is we want to, we want to build on that foundation of excellent work that's been done by so many folks in so many areas. And we don't want to take over and go in and say, this was all done wrong. We want to do something new. That's not what this is about. Honestly, what this is all about is this is about men and women in the fire service, past, present, in the future. Our folks actually need folks in positions of leadership, formal or informal, to spend time on things that are really going to matter, not only today, immediately in our jurisdictions, but also in the future, because we need a good foundation from which to build upon. So this is what we're trying to do. That is the vision. It's cliche, but the answer is I think a lot of us across the entire fire service, whether you're involved in the discussion or not, we just want to leave it better than we found it. So we started a conversation inside of individual organizations earlier this year, but there was some interorganization communication, and there just seemed to be folks that wanted to engage. They wanted to do the right thing. Nobody really wanted to kind of fight or disagree. But most of all, what we recognized is that we needed to find like one voice is kind of how this has been termed. But the answer, and I think it's the credit is to Chief Jackson or others, but the answer is really this is many voices that we're trying to consolidate behind one message and one kind of set of ideas. And I think that that's what we should, kind of keep focused on. So the real conversation about what to do with the fire service and move it forward started at the Joint Council. If you're not familiar with the Joint Council, you wouldn't be the only one, because about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, I didn't have any idea what it was. I thought it was a place where some of the chiefs went and pretended like they were working. But the answer is the Joint Council is a really important organization. I won't go too much into it, but it combines all of the presidents or delegates of the professional organizations, whether or not it's fire marshals, fire chiefs, career chiefs, instructors, and the 7 families, as they call them. But they take topic-specific organizations and they put them together into a room. And what they try to do is organize and prioritize and create a synergy in the fire service.
Frank, do me a favor, identify the 7 families for me.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Connecticut State Firefighters Association, Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs Association, Connecticut Fire Marshals Association, Connecticut Fire Department Instructors Association, the Fire Equipment Manufacturers, Fire Equipment Mechanics Association, and the UPFFA. And did I miss anybody?
Connecticut Fire Chiefs.
Connecticut Fire Chiefs. There you go. It's that. So again, those are really wide representation: labor, management, volunteer centric, career centric. And I think that that's a big highlight of the Joint Council, which is it really tries to gain a perspective and ideas and represent a lot of fire service, the fire service in Connecticut. So that's the Joint Council. But as we started to kind of get into the topics, right, our big challenge here is that we wanted to find and make sure that the people in the fire service out there, all the way down into kitchen tables, were included, and that the Joint Council wasn't going in for some massive takeover. Obviously, as you know, that doesn't go over very well with fire chiefs, nor the land of place where we call a stubborn Yankee. So, but we also were dealing with some history. It's always been this way. We were promised things, there were conflicts and some principles. But I think that once we got around some of the raw emotion of, the people are taking things away, they don't want to see our priorities. I think what really crystallizes is that we recognize that we didn't have a planned approach across as much of the Connecticut Fire Service that we could. And that was what was kind of confounding our legislators, our organizations themselves. And it was really preventing us from getting so many of these needed resources and attention. So we ultimately, I think we lost our priorities in the fight down at the Capitol for some of our priorities just because we couldn't be organized. So The Joint Council has a lobbyist that represents several of us. There's another lobbyist that also works with the UPFFA and really gave us some solid advice on how to handle our legislative action. And really what they said is kind of bring this down into 3 actionable priorities that we can submit. And that's going to be the way that we're going to gather not only the attention of the legislators, but it's going to demonstrate a show of unity. And, former UPFFA President Pete Rose, goes to this all the time, which is he says that if we all get together, we would have so much horsepower in the fire service. And I think that's what we've really been trying to capitalize on. So with enough of the background, here's the substance of what the 3 priorities are in the fire service, which is we want to create some statutory changes that will allow for the state fire administrator to commission a strategic master plan. And the strategic master plan will cover all facets of the fire service with all of these different priorities and needs. And then we want to make sure that the commission has the right statutory authority to take and vote on those recommendations and then actually move through to implementation. And we feel that through this process of a strategic plan, we will have more buy-in as we can tell the legislators the order in which we want things done and in general, provide a better structure for the fire service in Connecticut. But I want to be very, very, very clear, because this is a very important point to the entire thing. When sometimes we think about legislation, we think about top-down authority pushing into somebody is going to tell me what it is that we have to do or should do. And I would really encourage folks to look at this as what we're doing is exactly the opposite. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create a scaffolding or something from which to kind of catch and be a safety net for some of these areas. And at the same time, allowing those areas of success that we've seen in the fire service to grow further. If we have areas of weakness, we want to get it up on the scaffolding and make sure that it can be addressed. So that is kind of part 1 of our priorities. And then part 2 is complicated and simple. And that is we want to keep our regional schools intact with their infrastructure through a capital fund that will allow the repairs and the maintenance of the big things. We need to repair burn buildings. We need to repair the existing infrastructure of the schools that we have. And we need to make sure that we have the right operating funds to be able to do that. And we need to make sure that those operating funds come from a source so that they're not going to be taken away. We need to feel that they are sustaining and that they come from a place where they're not on the chopping block to be cut.
Right. They can't be swept up.
Right. So those, Nick, because I do want to kind of bring the talk down or kind of the speaking at and get it back into a conversation, because we'll have a little bit more back and forth. But, I do want to address a couple of things. The biggest thing here is trying to give everybody in the fire service, a voice and an input, and really trying to listen for those folks who have some concerns. And the way that we've tried to do that is we really relied upon each organization to conduct themselves in a representative manner, which is they have members, they want to communicate with those members, bring that input back and get it to the Joint Council. It's been a really big focus of trying to get that feedback in there. Now, the secondary issue that is coming up, and it continues to come up, is that there's always that question of, but this is just so important. Cancer is just so important. And insert your section of choice, or that this bill was just presented and we need to do something about it. That's been the next challenge, because we know that other stuff has to happen. We can't push pause on something. So what I would say is one of the things that we're looking at in terms of, how to handle the 3 priorities, but these other things is we're just asking folks, don't stop talking to your legislators. Don't stop taking and telling them what you think is important, but just refer to them as we need a better plan. And in the process of a better plan, keep our fire schools going. But yes, we absolutely disagree with this legislation going through, or yes, we hear that you're asking about this topic, we want to. So I think that's an important point.
I think, well, let me ask, so if I understand it correctly, there is already a requirement for some kind of strategic plan, right?
So that would be a new one on me that I'm aware.
Yeah, I may be wrong.
So listen, I found out that the first thing that I would always say is I'm not quite sure, but what I would tell you is the way that we're approaching the strategic plan for Connecticut would be to have the statute require that the state fire administrator produce a strategic plan and make sure that it is appropriately funded. I'll hit the strategic plan quickly because it's part of my kind of closeout notes. But when we talk about a strategic master plan, we're talking about a plan that would be facilitated by somebody from outside of the state without any biases or notions. And we would really want that kind of open and pragmatic review. We want to be able to bring our experience and our expertise to the table, but we don't want to have our biases over what we feel is most important or how it should be done, kind of getting in the way. So I did want to frame the strategic plan like that. This isn't going to be like Summit 2025, add in, we're going to come up with action and recommendations from within the fire service. We don't know that that's the right plan, but
the other thing I agree with 100%, I'm sure Jeff on the UPFA is absolutely, there's going to be obviously some collective bargaining and some other stuff that the UPFA, I assume, is going to pursue, or whatever it is, right? So you're not saying don't do anything else. You're just saying that here's the three things that the group has gotten together that we think are really critical.
Right.
And these are the biggies. Do what you have to do Jeff, I'm not picking on because you're the union. I'm just saying that there's probably some things that are direct that you guys have been working on for a long time. You're not just going to throw your hands up and walk away, right? You're going to continue on.
No, you're absolutely right, Nick, and that's why Greg had mentioned a couple of times we've been a strong push of ours since 2016, and obviously we're going to continue on that fight. But as a labor organization, we certainly recognize the value in forming this strategic master plan, because we anticipate or hope that we're going to get to the point where, whether it's next year or 5 years from now, that if we're seeing a significant impact to labor or collective bargaining, that we can rely on the rest of the fire service, whether it be marshals or volunteers or instructors, to come in and assist us with our negotiating that into a better deal too. So the value's there. The concept that the Joint Council discussed on several month period is worth its weight in gold to us, as well as individual organization that sits at that table. So our organization applauds the effort, and we back it's fully, and at the same time they recognize just like you implied, some of the impacts to collective bargaining that we're going to continue on with, but maintain steady lobbying for these three priorities.
And listen, nobody loves the fire schools more than I do, and we have a lot of fire school people that are here tonight that have various responsibilities with all of those. And again, listen, we're beating the bejeebies out of them. But a quick story. So when they opened up the Connecticut Fire Academy, the joke that Wayne Sanford would say all the time is he didn't know if it was his turn to cook hamburgers for the firefighters or Jeff's, because there was no kitchen staff. There was none of that stuff. There was none of that stuff there. Even the Eastern, right? When Nick and the guys opened up Eastern, beautiful new building. But if we have a problem with an air conditioner, or used to be, if we had a computer problem or air conditioner, we had nobody, we couldn't call anybody because we didn't have money to do that, right? We didn't have any money to maintain those things. So yeah, what's 30 again? I don't know if we got that one.
So it's a strategic master plan with statutory improvements to the state fire administrator statute. The fire commission statute is 1. 2 is maintaining and increasing the regional fire school operational funding, so their operating costs to the current standards. And the third is to make sure that there's a capital fund available, or any capital means, to be able to maintain the infrastructure of the regional schools that exist.
Okay.
So
you got a little bit more, Greg, or can I?
Just a little bit more. I mean, I'm on the downstroke, but obviously, listen, I firmly believe, right, the fire service is really strong. There's a lot of really smart folks. I just happen to be the guy talking about it. There's a lot of folks working behind back of house to be able to move this forward, but we are challenged. the joint council's perspective, at the really highest level is with all of these priorities, we just need to have a better plan moving forward. So we have pitched this to the legislature, Public Safety Committee, Senator Austin, others are starting to really engage. But the one response that they came back with was, in addition to supporting these, and DASP as well, so the administrative agency is aware of what we're doing and supportive. There has been a focused kind of request for what could the legislature do to be able to support recruiting and retention efforts for the fire service. They're looking at this for law enforcement as well. So we, as a joint council, we put together some ideas. And what I will tell you is the pace of the legislature works very, very quickly. So there is still time to be able to make some edits, but such things that have been proposed and that are kind of getting ready to go to the legislature for consideration as to whether or not they want to swing at it would be providing support for our high school programs that are really starting to blossom across the state, their firefighter certification, EMT certification, integrating the use of the regional schools into those programs, increasing the access to CPAT facilities, removing or eliminating or subsidizing the cost of training, providing a menu of volunteer incentives, whether that's abatements, LOSIPs, just some ideas in that area. Whether or not it's leadership programs that we could offer to fire chiefs on organizational behavior and culture, so that we're welcoming folks into the fire service. And then lastly, there are some ideas in there that we ensure that the state has the proper amount of positions to support, whether it's the high school program, CPAT, and really, really encourage folks to think about this from the scaffold concept rather than the top-down management. This is supporting things that we're looking to do. The state can certainly help to set best practices, but they provide resources and guidance and standardization in areas where can be helpful. So, but that's it. We do have some flyers up on the site. Those are there, and I think the best thing I can do at this point in time for my colleagues is probably shut up and let some other folks talk and answer whatever questions you may have for me. So I really appreciate your attention and patience with me so far.
So let me just tell you, I downloaded the stuff that you had asked Jeff to post on listserv, and I believe those have been put into our chat room. So if there is anybody here that doesn't have that stuff already, the trifold and the full size, that stuff should be, I believe we put that into the chat room. And if not, we can get it in there by the time we're done tonight. I would like to thank you, Greg, for a good overview of everything that's been going on. I would like to hear from any of the other members of the group that would like to add anything to anything we've talked about, or bring something else up, more supportive stuff. That's open to you guys. Anybody? Anyone should say? Go ahead, Roger. Just go ahead. Bottom left corner, Roger. There's a button that has a little microphone. There you go.
Yep. There we go. One thing just to add to what Jeff said, as far as recruitment and retention, we've been having the same problems per se in the fire marshals area and in the building officials area. We had a meeting with DAS today and brought up the vocational bit, and it sounds like they're willing to jump on board as well to give us another avenue to, like we had talked about the other day, not only for firefighters and that, but for people who don't want to go directly into the fire service, but want to do other stuff that goes along with it at that point.
I think there's
your long-term.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think so. You've got the whole engineering thing, architecture, right? Report writing. It goes all the way to English. It goes through all kinds of. It ties in sprinklers. It ties in alarm systems. There's just same idea as with the the firefighter one, but in the from the building official on the fire marshal side at the tech school, there's just a whole bevy of stuff that you could tie into a prep class to do that. right? And then we bring them in as apprentices
yeah,
for
definitely.
summer, right? It's
Yeah,
perfect.
definitely. I mean, as we find, I mean, our workforce is getting older, looking around at what's out and about and looking out at applicants that we get. So it's trying to bring the young people on board, and that's a great way to start. If we can start at the high school level, then it really starts to, help get them interested and push them through.
Get them started on the right foot. Anyone else?
Just to go over a couple things that we have legislatively, stuff we've been working on over the past couple of years, or I guess first one would be fireworks, which we work on every year.
Yeah.
There was a little more push this year to get fireworks into the state in a couple different methods of either making them consumer or partially consumer grade to get in and be used. They actually have a website out there, and which I'll actually put out, is fireworkssafetyact.com, just as it sounds. And I'm not really sure what it has to do with safety, but it's out there to promote fireworks in the state. Last year, we worked with Rep. Horn over the past couple of years and finally got smoke alarms required in 1 and 2 family homes. We're trying to work with the realtors this year to iron out the last couple steps. Most of this is done with the sale of homes. We have a couple little things to iron out before we do that, but now smoke detectors are required, smoke alarms are required in the homes. And we'll actually be working with DAS in the spring, hopefully to do some type of public service and promotion. They were willing to sit down and do that with us. So a couple other things, we'll be working on a 10-year battery for all the smoke alarms.
By the way, they only last
And we're
about
hoping
they only last about 7.5 to 8 years.
yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. And we'll be working, trying to get our blasting and explosive regs up to date. Right now, they're all circa 1970. And the problem is they go through a legislative process in order to be changed, which takes
Right.
2 to 3 years. And we're hoping to do it now like we do with the fire code. We put it in as part of the fire code, then each time we change the fire code, we can also work on updating those regulations.
This is one of those things that Greg was talking about. Residential sprinklers. It irritates the crap out of me that we can't get our shit together, excuse my French, in this state about residential sprinklers. I don't want to launch on that, but here's where that's obviously not low hanging fruit, but that's something where at some point down the line that will float to the top, right? But that's not necessarily the top choice this year.
No, we had tried a couple of years ago, was probably our best push, and we were going to start in townhouses along that end, and then hopefully work up at that point. But there's a strong lobby that goes against it, and
Yeah,
we weren't able to do anything at that time.
crazy. All right, thank you, Roger. Mark Scribner, Chief Scribner, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to, for the two of you in the room that don't know me, I'm president of the Curtsies. I wanted to thank Greg, first of all, as my vice president, for being willing to step out in front and take the bull by the horn on this issue, and really shepherding the entire joint council to a place where we are today, where we have a single a message with many voices. Greg, it's not easy being out in front, and you take your beating when you step out and take on an initiative like this. But look at us now. Look at this room full of people. How wonderful. We're seeing a renaissance in the joint council, which strongly believe in the process of the Joint Council. For some years, it was somewhat latent, it was somewhat, it wasn't meeting on a regular basis. It wasn't doing much. And here we are. Look at us. We're meeting. We're active. We're focusing on priorities. I'm really happy to see that. And I'd like to say that renaissance isn't limited to just us either. Look at what Pete Bonomi is doing over with the instructors, and
Yeah.
I don't think you can keep up with the paperwork of the applications that are coming in. They're coming in so hot and fast. So good job, Pete. And may we all see that kind of renaissance as we start to really do these kind of things, where we're coming up with a single message from many voices. Greg, I think your idea in the idea that the Joint Council adopted of strategic master planning is the right way to do it. There's a lot of things that need attention, but they'll come out in that process. They will, if we can take an orderly top-down process, we'll start to bring those things into discussion and start dealing with them in an orderly way. So I think that's the right way to approach it. Would we like to wave a magic wand and fix all the fire service today? Yes, we would. Is that realistic? No. But you know what? I think the process, the Joint Council process, the consensus process, the legislative process, we're doing it right. And I think we're starting to see the fruit of that. So, without blowing a lot of smoke up of everybody's skirt, I just want to be here to say, hey, good job, everybody. This is giving me an awful lot of encouragement.
I think the small victories, the great work that this group subcommittee on cancer did to get everybody together and take something that was a couple years old, and turn it out in a few months, and to be able to say that there are people that are receiving benefits now because of that work. The more of these little victories and achievements that you have, again, people will say, you know what? And again, let's say that we only get one out of the three objectives completed. That's still a victory. Even if we don't get it completed this year, we get the road paved so that next year more people have it in their view, right? All those little victories will continue to add up and add up and add up and add up. And again, you look at the states that get the stuff they want, they have strong, unified groups at the top saying, this is the way we're going. There was a time many years ago, I think the Connecticut firefighters was that group that was taking the lead and able to do everything. But again, they're just going through the same things that, again, no disrespect, John, to the firefighters, but they're just going through the same thing we're all going through. It's just harder to get people to come and be that active and stuff. So you need to form bonds and teams to get stuff done. I don't think there's any group in the state that can walk out and stand out on their own and get everything through. I don't think any one of them, I may be wrong. I'm not as involved in the political arena as I used to be, but I don't think there's anybody that's got enough strength to push anything completely on their own. You're gonna need to form partnerships like this. Other comments from the rest of the other 7 families, the other families.
I think you got a hand, Nick. James's iPhone is looking to talk.
Oh, James, talk to me, James. Where are you?
There he is.
Hey,
So- Yep,
I didn't know who the hell it was.
that's all right. For those people that don't know me, I'm Jim Baldus, and I represent the Connecticut Fire Department Instructors Association on the Joint Council, but also I'm the chairman of the Education Committee for the Connecticut State Firefighters Association, which represents all the regional schools. And I just want to underscore and thank Greg also for his presentation tonight, but kind of underscore the one message, many voices concept, and the fact that we have an opportunity, and I was fortunate to be part of a couple of the initial meetings that we've had so far with the legislators, and saw the reaction to the fact that we're united, that we actually are coming as a single entity, if you will, looking for the betterment of the fire service across the state. And I think one of the things, if we can just kind of make a commitment to do, is every time we have an opportunity to talk to our legislatures, whether it be a representative or a senator, whoever it may be, within the topic of which we are going to be talking to them about, maybe about something that's local to us in our own towns, we make sure that we also send that message of these three critical areas that we're looking for, that one message that the fire service is bringing forward. Make sure they have the handout that's now being, put out, whether it's you send it to them in an email, you give it to them in person, but there should be no opportunity that we want to let go that doesn't complete along with that same message. And certainly we're going to talk about other items that we have that are going to be important to us. I think, from what was just, talked about on the fire marshal side or the UPFFA, those are critical issues as well, and they're not going to go away. But every time we talk to a legislator, we should also be making sure that we're bringing up this one message, many voices concept. Because if everybody's hearing the same thing, they're going to see, and as going back to what Pete Carosa said, they're going to see the strength of the fire service, and that strength is going to be just daunting. And I think from, again, the reaction that I've already seen among the legislators who are happy to see this kind of organizational attempt to work it as a group, I think we have a very, very good chance of seeing a lot of success. And I just wanted to convey that message.
How do they get through stuff, right? Coalitions. They come up with ways to put people together, right? And head in the same direction, and they have to give or take a little bit. But again, it's one legislator, doesn't matter what house they're in, by themselves beating the drum does not necessarily get a whole lot of attention. We went through this with the thermal imagers. The first meeting to get everybody a thermal imager was held in my city hall. It was the representative from Windsor Locks, Kenny Jeffries, and Kathy Cook was representing us, right? And we launched off on this. Well, there was another idea in another part of the state to do something, and it wasn't until, and it was actually the rep from Bridgeport that managed to pull all the pieces together that got everybody on the same page, and then got us in front of the legislature, in front of their committee, to explain what we're talking about. And we didn't get the money from where we wanted it from, but they got us the money. And the next thing you know, every fire department in the state's getting a thermal imager. It takes partnerships, people you don't normally work with. This is great because we're at least coming from the same culture.
Right.
Right. We have the same thought process. We look at a scene, whether it's the great grab they did in Meriden the other day or whatever it is, and we look at that and we all swell with pride, and we weren't even there. Right? We weren't even there, but we're swelling with pride because there's a good probability someone there got that training or got exposed to some training from the fire academy or from a fire school at somewhere in their life that talked about what a vent enter search is.
For sure. Absolutely.
Right? They learned it from someplace, and it could have been one of our byproducts and one of the great institutions that we have, and or it could be shift training, whatever it was, right? And so that's an advantage I think we have over other groups and other entities, is that we can do stuff, and we can do stuff together.
Agreed.
Good evening, Chief Carter. Anybody else? Someone else? Another comment?
Nick, I got a couple things, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So, one thing that seems to be puzzling to the fire service.
I'm losing him. Let's start with who's talking.
John, we can't hear you.
It's John Carew, CSFA's legislative liaison.
Okay.
John, you got bad internet or somebody?
He's frozen. No way, he's moving.
So a lot of that stuff that gets put in there by legislators is stuff we don't have control over, that we have to react to. And I'm not sure that our fire service people understand that. And I wanted to make that point, because some people say, well, that's nothing that is important. And maybe not to them it isn't, but maybe to the person that put it in, for whatever reason it was. The long session, which is what we're in now, allows everybody to throw any kind of stuff out there and see what's going to stick. And that's where a lot of the stuff that we're playing defense on, to talk with the different partnerships of public safety, appropriations, and OPM to say, you know what, that's really not in our wheelhouse. We got our three main things, and we don't want to be derailed by some of this other stuff. And some of it may be good to that one particular incident or that one different organization, but it's not the top three, and it's not something that we may come out positive, negative, or neutral on. It just may be there. And I heard a couple comments over the last couple of weeks, especially now, we're going into week 3 of the session, and now there's 60 or so bills that we're watching, and all these other things that are going on. And there's I'm sure there's more than that, but it's things that the fire service is not promoting. It's coming from somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
We have our schedule, but it's coming from somewhere else, and we need to react to it. But I'm not sure that our own people even understood that.
Well, and then when we get done talking about the priorities, we're going to address one of those that has got me a little worried. But that's a great point. Is anybody can listen? These guys, we had a local guy here wants to let 12-year-olds decide whether or not they get vaccinated. We're not going to launch on that tonight, but people put in bills because of some reason, and then again, some of that impacts all of us, and then we do have to get together and at least have some coordinated defenses or attacks or whatever you want to say for whatever that may be. But and this is where the Ted Trolls of the world and our advocates are always on top of it. Ted always had a list of what was going on that week and who was what, and we would get phone calls. Hey, we need you up here next Thursday. Suddenly, they've got such and such on the docket. All hands on the pump. Let's go. And we would end up. Luckily, we can leave work, right, and get dressed, go up there, and just have a presence there while something's going on, and get 3 or 4, people that are familiar with whatever the topic is, because there's a lot of other stuff that we don't control that's going on. That's a great point. That's a great point, John. Anybody else? I don't want to leave out anybody of any of the groups, so I want to give you all the opportunity to kick this around, make sure we're getting all the stuff squared away.
So can I speak? I have my hand up.
You can.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Chief Shelley Carter, newly made chief. I think I'm about a month in now. So you all, I'm learning from each and every one of you. I'm also the state representative for Women in Fire, for the International Association of Women in Fire. And I have read over the 3 initiatives, and I think it's pretty amazing. The one voice concept is great. But I always have a but. So I just want to make sure that whoever came up with this concept, whatever teams or groups came up with the concept, we want to just make sure that we are intentional about diversifying the group and the teams and making sure that we have a female voice in that group and team, and be intentional about finding a female voice. Doesn't have to be me. We have a lot of amazing women across the state of Connecticut, a lot of amazing women. And so if I could just say this out loud, and I wouldn't be Shelley if I didn't say it. Just want to make sure that we are we seek out the voice of the female firefighter, or those that identify as female firefighters, and folks of color on our teams and our groups, so that that one voice includes all of our voices. That's all I had to say.
And thank you, Shelley, for piping up. Excellent, Jeffrey Holtz.
Hey, good evening. I want to thank you guys for hosting all these seminars. They're great. My question is, there's a couple of legislative agenda items that were on the list that talk about volunteers and stipends and tax reimbursement and all that kind of stuff. I don't think, in talking with my local legislators, they don't understand the commitment that's required to stay active and meet the requirements for each town and stuff. And I don't know if this is the right forum, but if some type of sampling could be done, maybe a survey sent out through the listserv to get the requirements that people have to qualify for to get the incentives, because you know, I don't really think there's a understanding that it takes, whatever it is, 175 hours now to do Fire 1 and EMT, and Fire 2's whatever, 75 hours. And the amount of training commitment that's required even to get to the qualification level for your town to then do, whatever it is, 60 calls or 40 calls or whatever the number is, and how many training nights you have to do. And, those are a couple hours each. And I just think the time commitment that's required is not understood by a lot of people.
I would agree with you 110%. I just got back from Pennsylvania, where I'm in the process of doing a study down there. And it's not just Pennsylvania, it's all over the place. There's a definite disconnect. People love their fire departments, but they don't really understand what the fire department does. And there's two problems there. One is they don't know what their fire department does. And then number two is they're expecting Chicago Fire. They're expecting, just like NCIS, they're expecting everything to be solved in an hour and everything to be fine. And they don't understand what it takes and how much work and how many hours. We had one study we did, volunteer company, no emergencies, 3,500 hours of time doing things to support the fire department. Well, some of that was training. A lot of it was selling pumpkin pies or selling address things or running this and doing that and babysitting classes and all this other stuff. They were doing so much stuff extra that it actually impacted their ability to go to emergencies, because they were constantly there doing other stuff. I don't think people really understand and what it takes. One of the options that we do at Gales Ferry is that we invite the counselors to come to our monthly meetings. We'll invite one to come, whatever works for them. They get to hear the reports. They get to, probably the first time they've seen the apparatus. They don't have any idea about the training. They don't have any about any of that stuff. Yeah, these are the same people we ask to give us money, and they don't really know. I know there's a lot of smart people in this room right now that know that saying, if you don't do this, people are going to die and kids are going to die, is not the sales and marketing. That today's legislators are smart. They want to know facts. They want to know numbers, not just all the time, often, many. That's not it. It's like we went to this particular EMS call, the opioids. We went to this many opioids last month, and that's the fourth month of that high of a rate. They want to know numbers, because that's what they're being asked to do now. They're being asked by their constituents, why did you decide this instead of my plan or my thing? Because everybody's got something they want out of them. Program, I think that's Jeff. Is that you and the program coordinator?
That would be me. Yes, sir.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. What can we do for you?
No, I was just going to, kind of piggyback a little bit on what Jim Balda said in response to Jeff Holtz. When we talk about legislators, the most important people to them are their direct constituents. And, the time to meet them is long before you pose a request to them. So you really need to work on those relationships, engage them on a regular basis, like many fire departments do. Also, many of the regional fire schools do a good job. They host a legislative night. I know the UPFFA and other organizations typically offer a fire ops type day where they engage legislators. They put them in gear. They allow them to kind of spend a day in a life as a firefighter, go into a burn building, really engage them, because you may not need them this year for their support, looking for their support. It might be 2-3 years down the line. But, again, they may reach out to us as a state agency to validate information that they're receiving on a local level. But those requests really need to come from the local, the local fire chief, the firefighters, the fire officers. They live in your community and you're the most important person to them.
Absolutely. And again, the relationships are so big. So I know Ted Schroll would back me up. Kathy Cook, Linda Orange. What was it? There was a guy from West Haven. His last name started with a D.
Steve Durgan.
Durgan, huge.
Garden.
Yeah, these guys were huge supporters, and whenever now, Kathy would call, may he rest in peace. Kathy would call Red McKeon up a lot of times because Red had planted those seeds and had reached out to all those things. He would go to all the different operations, but that's the same thing we need to do. I mean, we were very fortunate in our community, that we had the fire department and police department had a really good relationship with the elected folks that we had. But again, that's a good point. You got to have a pre-existing relationship. You can't just knock on the door and say, hey, listen, I'm preaching to the choir here. But, you can't just knock on the door and say, hey, I'm from the fire department and we want blah, 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 $1 million because we need a new thing. We need to track that and paint the picture for them so that when we get to that point, that it's not a shock to that. Jeffrey Holtz, did you have another question? Because your hand's still up, or I don't know.
No, that pretty much answered it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any other contributions to the conversation? Because then I'm really going to kick the can.
Chief Ted Schroll, I don't know if I'm unmuted or not.
You are unmuted, sir, and
Okay,
we want to hear from you.
I'm just here to support John, so I wasn't expecting to speak, but a couple of the items that were mentioned already, I just want to reiterate if I can, and both of them from what Jeff just mentioned. The one thing to keep in mind is that each of us out there that contact your legislator, between like myself, John, or Nicola, who we got up there now, we're lobbyists, and the legislators up there, they see 1 million lobbyists, and everybody's wants to grab a hold of their arm and talk to them. But to them, we're just another lobbyist. When you go out there, you are the guy that pulls the lever. And I mentioned this time and time again. You pull the lever in your hometown. You're the one that sends them back up there. You are the ones that they want to talk to, or they want to, listen to. And to back, Jeff mentioned that, and to back up with Chief Baldus, a suggestion I have tried to get across is that if you as a firefighter or fire chief out there looking to are able to support our program, and you talk to your legislator about that, my suggestion was then go shoot off an email back to John or to Nicole or through John, make it through John, that you did that. Then John can make a contact to make that person, legislator, realize that John's up there talking for us, and that he is talking for his own constituent. I hope I'm getting myself clear out there, but they want to know that. I mean, if John can go back and touch base with legislators, said, "Hey, I talked to Nick, Chief D'Elia, and he told me about this. He had a conversation with you about our program, and I just want to come back and let you know that yes, we got the program, and I'm the guy. If you need somebody and you can't get a hold of Chief D'Elia, call me, and I can get a hold of Chief D'Elia." So that John knows what's going on at the same time.
So we're connecting those dots.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
Jeff, UPFFA Jeff. I don't know how to say
what can I say? What can
So-
I say after Teddy? He's got everything there. He's got all the answers. Good job, Ted. Listen, I just wanted to add a few things here, and I'll be brief. Some of it is in regards to some of the comments that were already made. I think right now the legislature is viewing the fire service, EMS, and police as a crisis situation in regards to attracting members. Recruitment and retention is such a common term right now, and fortunately, Senator Anwar identified this early on in regards to EMS, and I think through a lot of our discussions and a lot of our meetings with some other legislatures, that's broadened quite a bit, and they're certainly understanding the significant decrease in roles of the volunteer memberships, and that's slowly progressing into understanding how what we're turning around, where some of our municipalities were coming up with hiring lists of 800 to 600 members is now get down to well under 100. So there's a significant issue, and I think that some of these items that were talked about, like the tax rebates and things like that, are getting thrown out there as suggestions or quick fixes. But I think it's important to recognize it's coming from those uneducated legislators just trying to make something look good or go for a quick win. But our priorities here, what the Joint Council has been discussing and trying to build up the full structure of the fire service across the Connecticut in all areas. I mean, you heard it tonight. Each so-called family has been talking about what we're trying to achieve here, and we're looking at bringing kids into high school programs to come out ready to hop into the fire service is leaps and bounds from discussions 5 years ago. So I think that the priority is the priorities that we've developed, that we've talked about, is building a significant base so that when once we get into sessions down the road, and we're going to be in a much more better position to achieve success in building up, whether it be the volunteer ranks, whether it be to get those marshal programs in place, or get roles in the career parts. Those lists more competitive. So, I think this is, my organization fully believes that this is a solid basis to start, and our priorities are really going to hold up. As Greg explained, it is going to be the scaffolding to hold up this fire service and make it grow as a statewide service, not the east side of the state, or one particular fire school in one particular area. So globally in the state or across the state, we're going to see, if we're successful this session, this is going to be a strong development for all of us.
I tell you, one thing that the EMS did that went out on a little bit of a limb is we'll pay to train you, and then you have a job. They're graduating classes every 3-4 months, however long that class is. It's kind of like when Providence used to pay their recruits like not that much money, but just enough to make them, so that they were getting paid something until they graduated, and then they got their rate. I don't know what the ambulances and AMR is paying these new EMTs, but that system is working. I think, the intent of getting these young kids, and we did a little bit of this many years ago, getting these kids as close as they can be to a firefighter one. I know we're dynamically now trying to be able to get the interior stuff done and all that. It's caused some concern some places, but somewhere down the line, we have to get them just like into any other trade, right? If you want to be a plumber, you want to be a carpenter, whatever, you got to get into the system, get into the loop, right? And dive in there. Mark, Chief Scribner is advising that those kids are making $24 an hour to go to school. Nothing wrong with that, right? And then they have a career, and then if they've got talent, they can go on to be a medic. I think we could be doing something like that for the fire service and just getting them in. Just get them through the door, and then And again, they'll start the regular progression that they'll start here and get bigger and bigger, or not, or stay, or do whatever you want. Chief Priest.
Hey, thanks for letting me jump in again. I wanted to kind of tag on to Jeff's comments. So the first is this. I'm glad he brought up Senator Anwar EMS working group. They're working on a bill that's going to level Medicaid funding with Medicare funding. There is going to be hearing on Monday. Your organization, which whoever you represent or whatnot, it should be pushing those things out to you. So there's a reason why the fire service may want to come out to try and support that as well. But the real follow-up kind of note that I have, and it goes to what Teddy is saying as well, is, I really hope that folks are using their organizations to communicate what their priorities are. And as they're moving their priorities for their particular organization forward, it's really that cross communication with the other organizations. So presumably one could say I'm a career chief, right? So I'm therefore opposed to labor, right? And so Jeff and I are going to be working things from different angles. But the reality of it is I think that this is where we're seeing some of the successes is that, maybe whatever Jeff's priority is, and we're not talking about cancer, but maybe it's a collective bargaining thing. Maybe it's not like my first priority, but the answer is I don't want to inadvertently do any harm to something that I may support or I might acquiesce to. So the concept of just sharing information about as simple as Roger's telling us, hey, we're going to be against fireworks, maybe it's not my biggest concern, but when it comes up, if I've got a legislator who's asking me the question, that I'm prepared for it to be able to answer it and say, this is where we stand. But, oh, by the way, we really need a better plan for the fire service. So we're not handling all these little spot fires is the hope, because when we're coordinating information back and forth, what we're doing is we're not presenting the situation where it looks like somebody's trying to cut the line in front of someone else, and trying to get the priorities. And just my assessment of it is I think that's what the perception was. I think there was a lot of emotion. I think that people were just being like, well, you want that, and I'm going to try and get this. But now Jeff and I talk frequently. I mean, everybody talks together. Pete, we're all together on this. So we really have a good understanding of what each other's priorities are. So that's my comments. Thank you.
I think if we're ever on the same train, wherever our final destination is, if we have all the same concepts going forward, if we, because if you start out and you're going to be a volunteer firefighter in some company, whatever company you want, and you could just be a volunteer there forever. Maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're like a Pratt & Whitney engineer or something, and you have a separate gig and you like what you're doing, but you want to be able to volunteer. There's other folks that are going to get into that with the intent of going on and getting a career job, right? So the fire schools ought to be pretty solid on the front end of that, right? To make it wherever that person is going, because the fire doesn't care whether they're a career or volunteer. Again, I'm preaching to the choir. Doesn't care. But so we need them going on the same way, because the next thing you know, listen, I don't know about anybody else, but every time I hear a working fire about anywheres other than the big metros, it's going to 2-3 alarms because you need help from your neighbors to put it out. Those people all need to be trained to some similar level, if not the exact same level, right? That's why we have all the standards. So however we get them into the system, wherever they're going to land during that journey, I think it behooves us. It's our responsibility to make sure we're all on the same page, and they're on the same page, so they're not getting themselves all in a jam, jacked up, trying to do something they're not prepared for, or being told to do something they're not prepared for, or whatever it may be. I think that's a huge. I think the other thing, all of the stuff you're talking about are safety issues. The commission is the tip of the spear for firefighter, my personal opinion. The commission is the tip of the spear for firefighter safety in the state of Connecticut. Right? Because as they look at stuff and their participants look at stuff, it directly involves firefighter safety. I don't care if it's smoke detectors, sprinklers, fire doors, fireworks, whatever. All of this comes back to firefighter safety. It all comes back to firefighter safety. It all does. So that's why we're all here. I mean, that's why we all chose to do what we do. is because in the end, while we're going to protect Mr. and Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith, in the end, we need to be able to take care of our people when we're doing that, right? So that's the overarching globe here, is that we need to all be on the same path so we're not derailed. Because like I said, the fire doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're in North Hooterville or if you're in downtown Hartford. It doesn't care. Right? We're fighting Mother Nature. Next, anyone else before I kick the can? I hope I didn't move. I don't want to lose. Any other comments, suggestions? So we've been going just a little bit over an hour. As they say at the meetings, hearing none. All right, I'm gonna kick the can. Have a little, maybe not, little controversy. All right, so and Shelley, Chief Carter, I'm gonna pick on you for this one. I'm actually glad you're here. So recently, legislator has my understanding, and the people in the room that are more in the know than me, please correct me if I'm wrong. But someone has suggested changing the requirements for CPAT and make a legislative change to a departmental decision on that impacts a departmental decision about the CPAT. I think everybody here is well versed. I want to just tell you what I understand is that a national effort, 10 different fire departments, everything from Phoenix to New York City to Florida, came up with this standard test. It's been through the Department of Justice. It is made and with times and adjustments and everything to make it as open and as inclusive as possible. That's my understanding of the CPAT exam. And apparently someone wants to weaken that and make it not as strenuous for I guess for female firefighters. Shelley, am I on the ball with that?
You are, that's true.
So where are we at with that? What's the thought of the group? Since we have a lot of the leaders across the state here.
Let me first comment as part of the group.
Absolutely.
So the legislation, after speaking with several females across the state, it's a definite no for us. Nobody wants to weaken or make the CPAT less strenuous for women. From those that are coming into the fire service that I spoke to, those who are volunteers and those who are career. The issue is trying to get women on the job. And I guess the legislators thought it might be a good idea to, hey, let's make it easier for the ladies. The problem is they never really spoke to the ladies. And so we've had several women take the CPAT, pass the CPAT. We've had several men take the CPAT, pass the CPAT, or fail. I think the issue is with getting more women on the job doesn't have much to do with making the vest 50 pounds or 75 pounds. I think it's more teaching women and training women how to pass the CPAT. There's been several programs. I believe it was Bridgeport that put on a program where they trained specifically women exactly what was expected of them. And they trained them, I believe, for up to a year before they were to take the CPAT. And a lot of those women are on the job today. I think the issue is not let's make it easier in the evolutions. It's let's teach people what to expect. And you have to face it, when you have not grown up with firefighting on your mind, a lot of these young ladies that don't pass it just don't have the knowledge of what is expected. I think that's the issue. And then to add on top of that, having a CPAT center that's open to the elements. I think there's something going up in North Haven soon, which is a enclosed building. Makes a lot of sense. But even when you were talking about young people getting them on the job, with my girls firefighter camp, I introduced CPAT to the 15-year-olds this year.
Nice.
And so I got to get them ready to make sure that when they turn 18, 21, or whatever age they choose to join the department, they are prepared to pass that CPAT. And that's my take on that.
I'm sorry, Jim has to leave. Thank you for coming, Jim. I thank you. I think I saw a position paper put out by the joint group, and I think the UPFFA may have put it out, and I think it was similar. And the idea is, it's not that we need to weaken the test. It's let's make it so the test is available all year round. Let's just, because of my understanding, this may shock you, I never took the CPAT test. Even though Pete Struble did, and Pete Struble actually passed it. But again, my understanding is if you read the book and do what they tell you to do to get prepped for it, and you give it the right amount of time, you should do pretty well. I was a monitor for that. I was one of the, people checking them off as they were doing their stuff. I was involved just a little bit there for a short period of time. I think and I don't want to speak for the joint council, I'll let them do that, is the idea is let's make it more open. Let's make it more opportunity for all different folks that are not, so that, we do represent our communities. Let's make it open whether it's education, whether it's practice, whether it's whatever it may be. Let's make it so that it's possible that you can be able to pass the exam. I know,
Well,
listen,
if you're having young people take firefighter 1 or get them up to at least the speed of firefighter 1, even in those junior programs, you need to be introducing the CPAT. Like,
absolutely.
Why firefighter? Yes, but how are we going to get them there? And you should also, this is just what I do with my folks, is introduce those written tests. Introduce it. You don't have to teach it until we get closer to that time period, but let me just explain to you the process, not just making them firefighters, is preparing them to become firefighters.
No, I'd say something goofy. So tactical combat care, right? Stop the bleed, tactical combat care, and firefighter CPAT. My lacrosse team does that stuff, and they don't even know they're doing it. Right. We're doing. We're calling it the Army Special Forces. Don't leave your buddy behind, and we're teaching them how to carry victims out of school. They don't know that. Hopefully, the muscle memory will kick in. Same thing with some of the CPAT skills and some of those things, some of the climbing and all that. We're making them do that stuff as part of conditioning. They don't know what my root evil stuff is. But again, I think it's again, whether it's boys and girls clubs, I mean, church youth groups, there's a ton of opportunity because we all need help. And it doesn't matter if it's white help, black help, Hispanic help. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We all need help. So why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we reaching out to these non-traditional sources? Right? And fill it. Anybody else want to comment on that? Not everybody's on the same page. Oh, we got hands up. All right, I'm gonna go with Jeff again. I think you were up first.
Oh, I beat you, Greg. Listen, I certainly want to say thank you to Chief Carter for comments. Because I'm not I wouldn't be facing this issue. It wouldn't be right for me to comment on the particular piece of legislation, but I do want to comment on the legislative process and how this particular bill kind of plays a role in it. First off, for the joint council to come out with a position paper on it just goes to show how the council is working together as a whole, because this obviously wouldn't affect a majority share of the table there. But I think that collectively we all kind of agreed where we were on what the physical attributes of any given point during your person's career or volunteer time would require. So the importance of the CPAT is there. I think it's important to note that if we, the conversations that I had with legislators over the past couple of weeks, I'm really starting to learn more about what was already spoken about tonight, is the uneducated legislator in regards to the fire service, and them not really recognizing the difference that a CPAT is required for a position on a career department, and the same physical requirements may not be required for a volunteer. And so that it really does only affect a small portion of firefighters across the state. But the bigger part that they're not recognizing is that it's not the physical fitness part of it, because if we look at the roles of the volunteers versus the roles of the career firefighters in the state, you're going to see very close to the same amount of females in each one proportionally. And that's an issue to us. And that should be an issue to all of us collectively, because, you know, there's a missing component there. And our goal for the career firefighters, the UPFFA's position, is that we definitely are reaching out to our female members to get them into a collaborative working group to identify what areas we can be more inclusive and bring to either our legislators or our municipal leaders to say, look, at this is where we need to put our efforts, not in diminishing the quality of physical fitness or education or what it may be, but what we need to do to make this accessible and inclusive of all demographics. So that's where our organization is going on that.
Thanks.
So there's a female firefighter working group?
We are reaching out to we're reaching out to all our female members of the UPFFA to see if they want to be involved in a group that's willing to collaborate with our legislators, starting with the purpose of initiating as a result of this bill, but hopefully to grow and be an active part of our organization to include any concerns that the female firefighters may have.
We need to hook the two of you up, because it sounds like in many cases you're gonna be talking to the same women, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
Right. So there's an opportunity. I love it when we have these things happen on the show, but there's another opportunity there to get hooked up, and because if nothing else, from a communication perspective, there may be folks that Shelley doesn't have on her line, even though I doubt it, but there could be. And then there's this stuff, and there may be some resources that the two of you can share in a joint operation to get to where everybody wants to go.
I would like to definitely talk to you more about that.
Sure, absolutely. I will send you my contact information.
Thank you.
Home run. Chief Priest, you put your hand up and then you pulled it back down.
That's because I knew Jeff was going to do a great job in answering the things that we had. I think that, Chief Carter hit a lot of the things too, but, I think, first of all, we have to start by affirming the work of our female colleagues who have met the standard and appreciate them. And then we engaged them with the discussion before we came out with our position statement, because we wanted to make sure. And actually, thanks, Chief Carter. I appreciate it. It's a great conversation. The other is, I think what this done, even though that this bill was misdirected, not misguided, right? It was well intended. But what it's doing is it's really setting the stage for the conversation that the fire service needs to have on retention and recruitment of minority and persons of color and females and everything else. And this is why we need a strategic plan to be able to address all of these things ahead of time, so that we can bring all these wonderful ideas together and move it forward in a way that it can be properly resourced, planned for, and then executed on. Because this is another perfect example of there's these pockets of light of just fantastic efforts that are going forward, and it's trying to capture them. So the only other thing that the Joint Council discussed on this is that the CPAT is not a mandatory test for any organization. The Academy requests that people have it, but it's also an AHJ thing. So approaching it legislatively is also, perhaps not the best way of doing it, so that the AHJ has the ability to change their hiring standards. That's the only thing that was discussed. But we really have to focus on improving the access to those indoor CPATs, making sure that they run them off hours, increasing the practice, and above all, removing the costs for the candidate. Right? That's a tremendous barrier. So Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Hopefully, Chief Carter, I did that some justice. But thanks.
Very good. Anything else?
I'm sorry, I just want to just add one more thing. The chief priest just mentioned, and I wanted to mention earlier, there's a lot of other issues. There's a lot of other issues that women face on the job or faced getting on the job. And so now that, I've felt like I've been beating my head against a brick wall for a little while, but now that the conversation has been had and the door has been opened, please, let's just keep this momentum going. Because there's a lot of females that are just waiting to have the ability to sit and talk to all of us. And so one of the things that Chief Priest just said was the cost of the CPAT. And I mentioned to a couple of folks, maybe some of the legislators, myself, was, me coming on the job 24 years ago, newly divorced, I couldn't afford a $175 CPAT.
Right.
I feed my kids. So that's just another option that, our legacy firefighters might have that abilities. Our folks that are coming from other careers might have that ability, but a lot of us don't. That would be really great assets of folks to have on our departments. So in our paid departments. So please just keep that in mind as we move forward with that discussion. There's a lot of other issues that goes along with recruiting and retaining folks.
Maybe at some point we're Sherry, down the line, maybe we'll get together on the show. You can bring a couple of your cohorts and we could air that stuff out. Right? Let's share that information. Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Because we're going about an hour and a half. And I just want to make sure we've got a lot of folks that have been hanging on and listening. A lot of names I recognize. And I'm excited that you're all here. If we don't have anything else, I'm just going to move on to coming attractions. Anybody else? All right. So again, thank you, everyone. I think it's important that we get this information out. Again, I think someone made the comment, it's one of my favorite movies is Drumline. One band, one sound. Right? Everybody on the same page, heading in the same direction. We may waver a little bit because we each have some, our organizations have some needs that we have to make sure are taken care of. But again, we're all heading to the point. And I happen to think that we should have, that the commission should have the responsibility and authority it used to have, and that Jeff should have. I don't think Jeff, I don't know. I have never heard Jeff complain about any working relationship he's ever been in, but I haven't heard him complain about the one he's in now, working for the Department of Public Safety. I almost said the cops, but I've been here. But again, I think we need to have somebody that worries just about us. That's just my 2 cents. All right, couple things coming up. So next month, I can't believe this, but we're going to have the U.S. Fire Administrator. We're going to have the doctor on, and she's going to talk about it wasn't a symposium. The meeting, huh?
Summit.
Thank you very much. The summit she had about and the six things they've chosen to focus on. And let me tell you what, this lady's rocking and rolling. NFIRS is never going to be the same. She did NFIRS for a very long time. She knows what's the matter with it. And it's just not going to look the same at all. And it's going to be doing, I think it's going to do a whole lot more. There is a podcast out that the USFA did. If you look it up, it's Merrill Moore, I think is, can't remember which one's, I think it's more Merrill, right? Dr. Moore Merrill, that they talk about that, but we're gonna have that, and we actually have the proceedings from that summit. We'll have that in the mailbox when we have her on. So that's going to be next month on, I think it's the 15th. After that, we'll go Rich Gasaway. Situation Awareness Matters will be coming on, and he's going to be talking about the changes in how SAM has matured and how it can be used in different ways besides just the fire service. And he's going to talk about how the different companies and the different agencies and the total different venues that are now taking that and applying that. And then the next one we have is Terry Captain out of the FDNY. He's going to be talking about, it's kind of an interesting concept. We talked about it last year, I think at the New York show, is the changes that he and the FDNY went through, not only with the tactics and the protective equipment and all of that, but also the changes they've had to initiate in leadership, maintaining the culture. So I think that's kind of I think that's going to be a kind of a neat conversation. And so he will be on in April. So keep your eyes on to listserv. Again, thanks to Jeff and Mark and the rest of the team and Pete that send out the critical conversations notes to everybody. We're really excited about the spring. I think it's going to be pretty good. And who knows who we'll find, who else we'll find to come on. I have to thank Eric's, the superintendent of the National Fire Academy. I was down there teaching, and I talked to him and I said, listen, I'd really like to get the US fire administrator on. And he goes, she's great. He goes, send me a note and I'll add something to it. And he did, and we're in. The last thing, I was going to wait till next month, but I'll do it this month, is for the first time I ever remember, the Executive Fire Officer Symposium is open to anybody. In the past, you had to be a graduate of the EFO to go to that symposium. They changed the name. Now it's the Executive Fire Officer and Leadership Symposium. Cutting edge, top of the line, the who's who of presentations will be there. It's in April. It's a Friday and Saturday in April. Housing is taken care of. You need to pay for your meals, and you need to get yourself down there. If you go to the National Fire Academy application, you look down, there is one for the it says Executive Fire Officer Symposium or something to that effect. And Eric said, sign up. He said, tell everybody on your show. He says, I know the caliber of the people that go to your show. Tell them, put it out there and have them sign up. So that's another opportunity. Other than that, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by tonight. I appreciate you guys coming on, and I hope we were successful in trying to share some of this knowledge. Jamie, anything else?
Nope, I think you covered it all. I want to say thank you so much for all your time, everybody.